Today, we're going to tackle a topic that you hear about all the time in software development, but it's one that a lot of people get wrong: behavior-driven development, or BDD. We're going to break down what it is, how it really works, and most importantly, why it's so much more than just another way to write tests. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been in one of those project meetings? You know the one. You've got the business people, the developers, the testers, and it feels like everyone's speaking a completely different language. That chaos, that miscommunication, that's exactly the problem BDD is meant to solve. So let's start there with what I call the communication gap. It's that moment where everybody thinks they're on the same page, but they're actually lost in translation. And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. This quote comes from a real case study by LT Mindtree. They found that when a product owner wrote a user story, a simple requirement, different people on the team interpreted it in totally different ways. The business analyst sees one thing, the developer sees another. And that right there is how you end up wasting time and money building the wrong thing. So if that's the problem, what's the fix? Well, that brings us to the core idea of BDD, creating a shared language that everyone on the team can actually speak. And I love this definition from Cucumber, one of the pioneers in this space. Notice the most important word here: collaboration. It's not about a tool, it's not about a testing framework. It's about getting people to talk to each other and build a shared understanding of what needs to be built before a single line of code is even written. And this is how you actually do it. This format is called Gherkin. It's incredibly simple, right? It's just plain English built around three words: given, when, and then. Given some initial situation, when a user does something, then this should be the outcome. Anyone, a manager, a developer, a client, can look at this and know exactly what's supposed to happen. This becomes your team's single source of truth. And that's the big takeaway here, right? BDD is a communication process first, and a testing methodology second. The real magic happens in the conversations that lead to writing these scenarios. It forces everyone to get on the same page about what the software should actually do from a user's point of view. All right, so we get the what. Now let's get into the how. What does this actually look like day to day for a software team? Well, according to Cucumber, it's like a little dance, a three-step rhythm that you repeat over and over. First is discovery. This is the conversation where the team gets together and explores examples of how the software should behave. Step 2 is formulation. You take those examples and write them down in that simple Gherkin format we just saw. And finally, step 3 is automation. You turn those plain English scenarios into real automated tests that guide the development. So what makes a good BDD scenario? It's all about business value. Take this example from software expert Dave Farley. It doesn't say anything about databases or APIs. It just says when Bob places an order. It focuses on the user, Bob, and what he's trying to achieve. That's the sweet spot. But, and this is a big but, it's so easy to mess this up. Farley also calls out this common mistake. If your scenario says something like cluster emits broker events, you've gone too deep. You're talking about the how, the technical details. A business person doesn't care about a cluster, they care about whether their order went through. You've got to stick to the what, not the how. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? A shared language, better collaboration. What could go wrong? Well, let's get real for a second, because BDD is definitely not a silver bullet. It comes with some serious challenges. And this right here, this is probably the #1 fear people have, summed up perfectly by user on Reddit. What about maintenance? What happens when your app changes and you have thousands of these Gherkin scenarios to update? Are you just signing yourself up for a massive headache down the line? So you've got these two sides of the coin. On one hand, BDD promises this amazing world of shared understanding, where your documentation is always up to date with your code. But on the other hand, the reality for many teams, as we see from places like Reddit and TestRig, is that they get bogged down by those maintenance headaches, or worse, they still don't collaborate and just end up focusing way too much on the tool instead of the principle. So how do you actually get the good stuff without the headaches? Well, it turns out success has very little to do with the tool you pick. It's all about the culture. You have to really build that collaborative environment, make sure everyone feels ownership over the code, and treat these scenarios like living things that need to be constantly tweaked and improved. At the end of the day, it's about the principles, not just the tools.
All right, so this brings us to the really interesting part. What's next? What if you could get all those amazing benefits of BDD, but dramatically cut down on the manual work that causes all that pain?
Think about it. The biggest hurdle we've talked about is all that manual effort. Writing and maintaining these scenarios is slow, it's tedious, and it's easy to make mistakes. But what if AI to do the heavy lifting for us? This is where generative AI is starting to completely change the conversation.
And the results? I mean, they speak for themselves. Genpact did a project with an investment firm where they used Gen AI in their BDD process. The outcome? They were able to deliver software twice as fast. That's not a small improvement. That is a game changer.
So here's how it works. You can feed your requirements to an AI, and it will automatically generate these test scenarios for you. It can mimic how real users would interact with the system. This doesn't just cut down on the grunt work and the errors, it frees up your developers and testers to focus on the hard problems, the stuff that really needs a human brain.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. BDD started as a way to help humans collaborate better. But if AI starts handling the writing and the automation, what does that mean for our role? Maybe it means our job becomes even more focused on that very first step, discovery, the creative, strategic human conversations about what we should be building in the first place. It seems the collaborative heart of BDD is about to become more important than ever.